What's up, Trek Nation, and welcome back to After the Snap. I'm your host, Tasha Pierce, and today, as promised, we are continuing our Worst of Trek series. And boy, does this one stink. Like, I smelled this one before I even walked in this room. This one stinks. What we're talking about today is an episode that is rated 5.3 on IMDb, tied with last week's episode, but I don't know. You may or may not agree with me that this one is actually worse. We'll see. This one is directed by Alexander Singer. The story is by Michael DeLuca, and the teleplay is by Brandon Braga. The original air date was January 29th of 1996. The title is Threshold, and by 1996, you had to kind of guess that it's a Star Trek Voyager episode. It is season 2, episode 15, called Threshold. And if you want to know what makes this one of the worst episodes of Trek, just keep watching. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little synopsis so you can feel where I'm coming from if you haven't already known from the title or looked it up. Paris attempts to travel in a shuttle at warp 10 and successfully breaks the barrier. Yay! Then he begins to mutate into an amphibian and his tongue falls out. Though the doctor devises a treatment, Paris escapes, kidnapping Janeway and forcing her to transform as well. So if you didn't know, now you know. We're going to have some amphibians. We're going to have a tongue falling out. And one of the most unpredictable things about this episode is somebody is going to get busy in this. I didn't remember this episode, and I must have purged it from my memory banks. So watching it was like watching it for the first time for me. Like, really, I think I've seen every episode of Star Trek, except for the animated series, and maybe we can watch that together. I've never done the animated series, but I've watched every other episode of Star Trek, every single one. And I don't remember ever seeing this until this time that I watched it. We got to see Tom Paris attempt the threshold in a holographic simulation, and he died. Unfortunately, this didn't end his horrible story because it was just a holograph. He was just in he was in the holodeck. It wasn't real. Even though it's theoretically impossible, B'Elanna, Tom, and Harry are trying to crack it in an effort to get back to the Alpha Quadrant just that much sooner. And in holographic theory, they did it. At least we saw it one time that they did it. I would hope that they did it multiple times, because the next thing you know, all of a sudden, they're doing a manned test flight. That escalated rather quickly. So hopefully they didn't just do this one time in the holodeck and say, you know what, let's go live. Hopefully they did it and they repeated it with a little more success a couple of times, and then they said, you know what, let's do it. Okay, Tom has been advised by the doctor to not do this test flight, and he was very much looking forward to this. So instead of Tom, they want to send Harry, because I'm guessing they want to kill him off. Tom has this enzymatic imbalance in his cerebellum due to the simulations, and the doctor isn't quite sure how the actual flight will affect him. So I guess nobody cared how it would affect Harry if he did this test run. But maybe I'm just being a negative Nancy here. So let's just move on, okay? Tom wanted to be a Starfleet icon, though. He feels like he's got something to prove to himself, to his father, and to Starfleet. He scoffs at the notion, okay, I'm being real sarcastic. He scoffed at the notion of a 2% chance that he would experience permanent brain damage, because what's another 2%, right? I said I was going to stop. I can't. Janeway was convinced to let Tom take the Cochrane for the test run, and he did it, and he reached warp 10. So yay. He reached warp 10. That means Voyager could be enhanced and the crew would be able to get home nearly instantly, because what they say about warp 10 is that you're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You are living in every moment in one moment. If that makes sense, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's the explanation. You're everywhere and you're nowhere all at the same time. So anywho, we know they didn't make it home instantly, right? So we can deduce that something happened on this test flight. So the test flight happens, and that's where the shit hits the fan. Even though the trip allowed them to collect data in every cubic centimeter of the sector, and it's going to come in quite handy when we get to Prodigy, this flight, it took a toll on Tom. He began to have negative side effects. His biochemistry began to change. Organs began to mutate. Tom was, to say it plainly, effed up. Tom was effed up. Now, the doctor and Kes did everything they could to kind of slow the mutations down with technobabble, because there was lots of that in this episode especially. And then Tom was just basically preparing to die. He really felt like he was close to death. We heard about a lot of his past, a lot of his fears, and for some reason he shared with us his first sexual experience. My mind's telling me no. He ain't scoffing at that 2% no more, no, is he? That 2% hit hard. So eventually the mutations continued and the doctor pronounced Tom dead. He had died on the table. But hours later, Tom was back in the game, baby. Yes, except he wasn't. I mean, his DNA began to mutate and rewrite itself further. And this is where things jump off the rails. Tom was changing. His skin was peeling. His organs started to duplicate and replicate inside of him. And then his mental state continued to deteriorate. And then his tongue fell out while he was verbally lambasting Janeway. So he's just going off on the captain. And he's like, oops, got a thug. So radiation from the warp core, blah, blah, blah. Tom continuing to mutate, blah, blah, blah. Tom escapes, blah, blah, blah. Now, I can't even blah through this little part, because this right here is going to knock your socks off. If you didn't know this is coming, this is going to knock your socks off. So Tom takes Janeway hostage, right? Steals a shuttle, jumps in it, regains warp 10, so he can remember enough to push that thing to warp 10 at this point, right? And then 3 days later, Voyager catches up with them on some barren-ass planet.
Hey.
Except both Paris and Janeway have evolved. They have changed into gigantic salamanders. Gigantic salamanders. And if that ain't bad enough, they must have got busy. My mind's telling me no. Because they had little baby Tom and little baby Catherine salamanders. Several of them. I don't understand. Yeah, then being the deadbeat parents that they are, they left the fucking babies on the barren planet. So Voyager found them. Of course, Voyager is going to take the ones that they presume to be Janeway and Paris. They're going to take them back to let the doctor work that technobabble, blah, blah, blah. But these babies didn't ask to be here. Where's Peter when you need him? Yeah, this was absolutely horrible and weird. And this was terrible. It was terrible. I feel like I have to take a shower from just talking about this. God. And I can't find any redeeming qualities for this episode. Usually I'll sit here and I'll say, but you know what? This became relevant because of this, and this. Or this was a good commentary on this. Not today. I don't know what this episode could have possibly been trying to achieve. I don't know if they intended for there to be any message because there is none. I'm pretty sure they thought it would be entertaining, but I don't call standing over the toilet waiting to retch very entertaining. So, yeah, this episode deserved that 5.3. In fact, I'm going to go out, say it deserved less than 5.3. Up to me, this episode don't even chart. The only reason it charts is because it's an episode of Star Trek. This was terrible. This was an insult to the intelligence of all of the diehard Trekkies everywhere. Fortunately, it was just one episode, right? It's just one episode. We could get through it. And I don't think this is the lowest rated. I think we're going to see Voyager again. So yeah, I hated this. But doesn't matter what I think. What do you think, right? What do you guys think? I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. If you're not doing so yet, listen to my guys, this Discussing Network, to kind of clean things out. Last week, Clarence talked to Gates McFadden. Yeah, so big things popping, little things dropping. Go, Clarence. But so yeah, palate cleanser, that would be a good place to start. Wherever podcasts are served, okay? Also, while I'm upping everybody else, why don't y'all down there hit that subscribe button. Give me a like on this video. Comment what your thoughts were about this episode, because yeah, it was bad to me, but I want to know your thoughts. Also, thanks to my current patron, and I'm going to put that here. So, finally, I got nothing else for you. It's been big fun today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll be back again next week Sunday, because I guess I could tell you this one, because it tied with this here episode. This had to be the worst series finale of any series that I've ever watched. So if they were giving a series an opportunity to wrap things up, tie a neat little bow on it, so you can say goodbye to the characters that you come to love, this is the worst, the absolute worst series finale I've ever seen, and that is the season finale of Enterprise. They deserve so much better than what they got. But we'll talk more about that next week, okay? Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Live long and prosper. Peace.